how's Ben Jordan? What have things been like since the early days before the full roll up here with Futureverse? What's the experience been like being part of a team that's winning awards? You guys are shipping like crazy and really trying to, change the world.
Yeah, I mean it's been completely what's the word? It's been crazy in some respects, but it's also been it's been an exciting journey. I think when Futureverse came together, there was this great vision, but there was a lot of things that needed to be handled before we could get to that vision. And I now feel like we're out the back end of that reformation. It's been quite a while now, 18 months. And you can kind of see the progress starting to get out there, and everyone's kind of starting to understand exactly where we're heading. It's been a really, really interesting, fun, exciting, kind of ambiguous time. But yeah, just really, really stoked to be right in the middle of it. It's really, really good fun, and I really feel like we're making some really good progress now, which is cool.
So you're on the front end of building a lot of these technologies, Sylo included, and the Futureverse scope has been quite large. So excuse me for not knowing exactly which component you're in, even though you're kind of doing a little bit of it all. But when you're creating these technologies, how do you decide what to prioritize as they're getting developed?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a lot of what I spend my days figuring out. We have, as you say, a whole lot of different choices or a whole lot of different options or directions that we could go. But I think the key part of what I focus on is what is going to get us furthest down the road as the next step. And with the direction that Futureverse is heading, onboarding IPs, rolling out functionality so that people can build experiences and deploy content for that IP, it can become pretty clear in terms of what we need to focus on next. We do have a range of products which have roadmaps, but it is a lot of what we're doing is about figuring out how we can move the right roadmap at the right time, and especially as a result of kind of inheriting all of these roadmaps as a result of the roll-up. But yeah, I mean, as CPO, I have my kind of fingers in every piece. And weekly, we go from team to team, and I get a really, really good gauge of what's happening out of each of the products and what each of the teams are focusing on. And it's about bringing those together in a way that actually lands for people that are going to be using our product. Prior to the roll up, all of these different technologies were very separate, and there was no cohesive user experience. Now we're at the stage where that user experience is coming together, it's seeing the light of day, and is actually touching each of the products. So we can start selling Futureverse to single customers, and as a result of customers picking up and utilizing Futureverse technology, they're tapping into the products that we have at the Futureverse layer, and they're utilizing the network or the open metaverse, the tokens that we've got on the networking layer as well, which is a pretty big milestone.
With the AI innovation that's happening around the world, and I'm somebody that's kind of like passively seeing things, and obviously we've got like the chat GPT with their image generation that's really taken storm, and we're starting to see conversations that are quite visceral reactions from some people saying, oh my god, you guys are ripping off this studio or these artists that have been doing things for the filter. And it makes me think back to how we have like the meme machine, and you got the cool cats filter, you got the fluff filter, and more of them are getting added, and the conversation's really coming back to, all right, what's the ethical approach to dealing with AI? And so when we look at how you guys are having AI innovation but also wanting to have things available for users, how do you balance going for like AI innovation to making things accessible to users?
Yeah, I mean, the content protection, the IP protection side of things is really interesting when you apply it to AI. I think Jen has done a really good job of showing the right way to engage in that side of things. If you have an ethically trained model and you can prove on chain that the thing or the generation that is being created has come from that ethically trained model, which is what Jen does with proofs on TRM, then you have a way to put content owners at ease. Now that's been applied to music in Jen's case, and we're also applying that to asset generation and creation for 3D with an altered state. And to me, that's the way you get the content on board in a way that the IP holders can feel comfortable with. And I think that is, it's a bit wild west out there with all of these models and the ability to create. Like you can literally take an IP and you can replicate that IP with models that are out there. And I don't think we've seen the start of the problems that that's going to cause for IP holders and people who choose to use that content. But we've been doing a lot of thinking around that. And I mean, putting generations aside, even for 3D models that are created by humans, there needs to be the permissioning and controls within the open metaverse to enable those IP holders to let those 3D objects out there. And that's a big part of what the Sylo proposition is focused on. And I mean, we can get into that in a bit later, but yeah, we've been thinking a lot about IP, and we've got a range of solutions, both in the generative world, but also in the how you use 3D models within experiences side of things as well.
It's funny that you guys are continuing to launch things that are coming almost at the perfect time of saying, hey, there's a need to have siloed IP, royalties, data in a time where artists and creators feel, hey, that's taken away from us. And it's also sort of funny that in the NFT landscape, when royalties got taken away, that was a huge component of it. And that was just a single industry of those that were building on blockchain. And now, arguably, with what we're seeing happening very quickly here, is people are now realizing, hey, this goes much more beyond that. So we're talking about Futureverse and products. Is there any product or feature that you feel you're most proud of to this point?
I mean, I came from Sylo, so I think seeing the journey of Sylo and where it's come from and where it now is, I mean, I'm very proud of that. The vision for that has kind of evolved to be a lot bigger than we originally kind of anticipated. And I think we've managed to plug that product into, Futureverse, such that if when Futureverse, properly succeeds, Sylo will as well. I think that's awesome. I think more generally, I'm very proud of the way all of these technologies come together to actually be something that is cohesive. I think that was a massive challenge. Yeah, I can see very clearly that we've been making the right decisions and been choosing to move in the right direction. And a lot of what's happening in the market now is validating those decisions, which is really, really good.
And what do you think the toughest product decision you've had to make is?
I think the toughness in the decisions that we make is about how we balance expectations versus where we know things need to head. I don't think I can pinpoint a specific decision really, but that's where a lot of the challenge comes from. It's like, how can we move the needle and plow through a lot of the I mean, sentiment is one thing, I guess, but more so, it's our job to make sure that the technology is heading in the right direction based on what we can see. And yeah, we spend a lot of time kind of talking internally and figuring out how we can do best by all of the stakeholders involved, which is it's an ongoing challenge, but I think we're doing a pretty good job there.
Continue with the realm of AI and the fact that it seems like it's evolving, and blockchain seems like it's the perfect home for it as it's very native to the internet. How do you feel AI is going to evolve within the metaverse aspect? And Aaron always talks about how the internet is the metaverse. We gotta stop just dropping the terminology around some of the Web3 terms. But how do you foresee it? Because when we see announcements coming out from different studios, and I think Star Atlas was one the other day saying that they have a general artificial intelligence that they're integrating for like immersive game experiences, and it feels like this is something that like everyone's integrating AI with. But how do you foresee that taking over this Web3 realm over the next several years?
I think at its core, a lot of the Web3 technologies would have been tailor-made for AI had AI existed, 5, 10 years ago when the whole blockchain thing was starting to go bang. It's almost like the use case for blockchain has kind of emerged through the AI advancement over the last couple of years. In that, you've got this native transaction layer for this internet native transaction layer, which agents and AI can tap into, really effectively. I think when we're talking about 3D in game, especially, a lot of the advancements in AI around, real-time generation are going to fundamentally change the way assets work. The opportunities around creating open environments as opposed to walled gardens, and the collaboration that can exist as a result of that, that we haven't seen before ever. Like if you needed to create a game, then you needed to take on all the risk, build a massive team, create your own unique gameplay, and you are the end-to-end experience, as opposed to now the barriers for entry are a whole lot lower. And as a result of that, you need the tooling to enable that collaboration, and that's where the interoperability side of things come in. And the protocols that define interoperability for people creating content are the same protocols that define interoperability for AI creating content. So that's where we're really trying to position Futureverse and the network underneath that. It's the correct protocols to enable that kind of collaborative world generation in a way that doesn't lean on a single party. So yeah, AI is it's gonna become increasingly more and more prevalent. More and more of the worlds that we walk around in will be AI generated, without a doubt. Now, when that's completely AI, and we don't really model it, would artists don't model anymore. I don't know that that's I can't put a finger on exactly when that's going to happen, but you've got to believe that eventually that will be the case.
One of the comments you made in there was taking the risks with having to put together a big team to build something. And this is not necessarily just for blockchain, it's for any industry. When you're, creating something, you start as, one few people and it expands as it grows. And you are taking risks of seeing, hey, is this going to work? Is it not? But for the Futureverse team, it's hundreds of people, and we only get to see a couple of front facing individuals. And it's really, really awesome. And I thank you for taking the time to talk with me over this. But can you give us a lowdown of like the team? How is it in your day-to-day interaction? Can you shed any light on what the experience has been like throughout this journey, meeting with so many different people? And you guys, Aaron keeps hinting at all these partnerships and everything. So obviously we can't go into all of that, but it seems like it's a really, really exciting environment to be around.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, a lot of the reason that I think, you don't see us behind the scenes so much is because Aaron is so good at what he does. Aaron understands everything that's going on, and it makes sense that he's out there talking to it. I mean, yeah, to your question about what it's like and how our team is kind of structured, it needs to be structured in such a way that we can be nimble and fast-footed, and if we're not, then things are moving so fast at the moment in particular that you need to structure teams such that you can make decisions quickly, and plans from 6 months ago or plans 6 months out need to be viewed with a is this right for us to continue on that journey at this present point in time? So we're very nimble in that regard, and for what is a reasonable sized organization, particularly in Web3, I think we're doing pretty decent job there. You have to build teams around key competencies and key people, and that's as things mature, the right people fall into the right places. And I think we've got some really, really incredible people in our team who see where we're going, understand what we're doing, and have the all of the required context to actually enable us to build what we're building. And I think that's been one of the big the big challenges or breakthroughs that we've had internally, is that the vision is settled, and as a result of that, you get a lot of people emerging who kind of understand everything, and the whole FutureVerse vision is, there are a lot of there's a lot of tech that has to come together in a way that is meaningful for the vision that Aaron's put out there to actually work. And it's really getting to the stage now where the tech is it's behind the scenes enough that you can focus on the benefits of the vision, as opposed to just focusing on delivering all the tech that has to deliver the vision, which is a bit of a change as well. But yeah, long answer for a pretty simple question. But yeah, it's good fun working internally. We've got a great team.
If you guys have so much tech that's going around, it's good to hear that you can maybe relax a little bit as it's coming out. But what do you feel keeps you up as night as the chief product officer when you guys have so many different things that are coming together?
The thing, what keeps me up at night is making sure that we are moving at the pace that we need to move to keep up with everything that's going on. Really, we need to be on top of everything that's happening so that we can understand where we fit in the jigsaw puzzle, in a very broad sense. So yeah, that's a lot of what I need to be across is how are we are the decisions that we're making now and the direction that we're heading now right, based on where things are heading in the market? Like, are we going to still be in a really good position in 3, 6, 9, 12 months time based on what we're focusing on now? That's what keeps me up at night.
It seems you guys are launching everything at correctly the right time. And so, so far you guys are doing things correctly. Let's jump into Sylo and focus more on that. So on the initial, and I was somebody that actually came into Futureverse like sort of late. I remember getting fluff seekers and that realizing, hey, this is a part of kind of a huge conglomerate, and then the Futureverse roll-up happened. So I wasn't there in the early inception days, but from my recollection, there was the Sylo wallet, and you had some features where you were able to message with that, and the whole component or desire with Sylo was just the fact that it was going to be a wallet and a way to communicate. How lackluster or accurate is that, and how in the world did the scope end up being as broad as it became, which we'll go into some of the finer details in a second.
Yeah, so Sylo itself started out as a communications protocol. Originally, we were really focused on solving what really was the walled garden problem for social, right? So and it was pretty big at the time. It was like, Facebook owns you, it owns your data. If you're not paying, you're the product. And so we embarked on creating a fully decentralized means of communication. And the wallet was the endpoint for that communication, right? And then we tied it to crypto, and that was, at the time, that was, a really productive way forward. When Futureverse happened, and in the lead up to Futureverse, we really wanted to put the work in to make sure that Sylo was a very integral part of Futureverse collectively, and that if we could evolve the story to be more than comms, then Sylo would be have much more of a footing in that space. And when you look at communications, or what we had created with communications, there was certain pieces of data that if you made portable, you were actually solving the walled garden problem for communication. So you think like your profile, your social graph, and really the essence of solving the walled garden problem for communications was enabling users to take their profile and take their social graph with them wherever they went, rather than that data being confined within a walled garden like Facebook. Now, that is a concept, is actually a data concept. That's a data problem, as opposed to a trend. How do you get the message from A to B problem? And that was really the epiphany for Sylo. Like, if we could apply that, if we could be the solve for that data problem, then now it's not just about an individual's comms, it's actually about data for the metaverse, or the data layer for the metaverse, which is now what Sylo has evolved into. And when you think about data, what we're really talking about here is any and all data that can be associated to anything in the metaverse, whether that be people or whether that be assets that live in the metaverse. There needs to be a protocol and a network and an agreed way to draw on any kind of data that an experience or user might need. And if you can do that in a way that is decentralized and not reliant on one kind of all-seeing party, then you're solving the walled the walled garden problem for the metaverse, which is really in essence what needs to happen for the metaverse to be open. So that was the thinking. That's how the whole story evolved, and that's where we are now. We're the data layer for the open metaverse, and it's a really important part to enable that the breaking down of the walled garden piece.
Well, it's funny when you're mentioning Facebook in there because if you have like an account, you can sign into a lot of different other applications nowadays. Well, obviously, when it first came out, that wasn't the case. But with the FuturePass, you're starting to see, well, okay, if you want to sign in with TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, you're a Web3 wallet, you're having all those opportunities. And so I'm curious, like, what's Sylo's role within Pass? Because I asked Aaron yesterday on the Spaces about the fact that the Readyverse launcher said that it was the Sylo platform. And I was completely taken aback by that. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is literally connecting everything. And his comment was, yeah, like when you're going into this, Sylo has so many touch points to everything, to what you're alluding to. Like data is everything, and that is Sylo. So for FuturePass, the Sylo connectivity, just give me your thoughts generally.
Yeah, so I mean, FuturePass it's a wallet, but it's also your means of bringing your identity with you, right? So your profile data is stored in a silo. Your social graph is stored in a silo. Any data associated with any of the assets that you have in your wallet, whether like, I mean, that could be like, say your fluff, right? Your fluff has a 3D model. Your fluff has instructions for the engines on how to render that 3D model accurately. Your fluff has data, has metadata, which defines that this accessory is associated with, this body. When you tie in the think protocol, this fluff also has a memory matrix, has memories, which provide context to the games as they require them. And all of this is it's not data that needs to live on chain, but it is data that needs to be ownable, and it is data that needs to be associated with that fluff. And that is Sylo.
It's getting me excited just thinking about all you guys are doing. And it's weird though, because I guess there's like part of it, and can you touch at all on like the technical depths that you guys need to go to? Because this was something that started many years ago, and now you guys have gone through that transition. And I think when talking about this, people are like, oh, they've been around for a while. Why haven't they gotten any traction? It's like, well, listen, they're trying to do some pretty big plans. So how do you kind of describe to people to think, oh, they should be moving quicker with what they're doing?
I mean, I don't, it's very difficult to have that context if you're not at the cold face of developing something. So I don't hold anything against the people that harbor, those thoughts. I just know that the direction we're heading and the focus that we've put on Sylo is ultimately putting all of these efforts, and we're giving it the best chance of success, which is all we can do. And I think I'm really confident that where things are sitting now and the touch points that Sylo has really puts that project in the right in the middle of what we're doing. It's it's on par with TRN and Think, and cohesively the three of them. The goal has always been to carve out the different pieces of functionality required to make an open metaverse work, and this is Sylo's sandpit. And we'll continue to keep evolving and improving all three of those things to make sure that the open metaverse can actually become the vision that we're wanting the open metaverse to become.
Well, a year plus ago, I remember Aaron making a comment about how a Sylo needs to be able to handle potentially billions of transactions, and I was like, "Holy geez, that's That's an insane amount. Now that you guys have just released the paper, going over it, I think it was mentioned before, but you guys had the ticket system with the microtransactions. And just quickly reading off the white paper for the beginning here, the Sylo token serves as a utility token of the Sylo Network, enabling the decentralized data layer for the open metaverse. Sylo token facilitates interactions, rewards contributors, and ensures interoperability among creators, developers, hosts, and network supporters. And in spending Sylo, and so the games and applications utilize Sylo token to access and pay for licensed data stored in silos, such as the 3D models associated with IP. This kind of access is paid for utilizing a novel off-chain micropayments mechanism we've coined tickets. So what the heck are tickets, and how do we fully understand how they work?
I think a key thing to remember with Sylo, or data that you would store in a silo, is that it's not data that requires a blockchain to store, right? So the layer one blockchain, you transact against it, and the data you store in a blockchain is replicated across every single node. Now, with data that you stored in silos, there's not the requirement to replicate that data everywhere. So you're actually going to where the data is stored. And what that means is that to pay for that data, it's actually a transfer of value from the person that wants the data to the host of that data, as opposed to distributing a transaction's value fairly across all of those that are contributing. So, I mean, that's the first fundamental thing. Now, another requirement when you're looking at that kind of data is that you want it to be granular enough that you can pay per request, just like an API. And if you're thinking about fetching, you might be fetching, I don't know, 100 things at once. There's absolutely no way that you can transact on chain 100 times for the data that you need for a particular asset. So we needed to solve for that problem. And this was actually, the solution for this is something that came out of the original work with the communications protocol, because it was very similar, right? You had data that was stored somewhere, and you needed to compensate the person that was delivering that data. Now, tickets is the solution for that. And what tickets are you can think of them almost like a lotto ticket. So what happens is the person that is wanting to pay for that data puts an amount of Sylo in escrow, and instead of transacting Sylo to the host of the data, what they're actually doing is they're issuing a ticket which has a chance of winning the silos that are in escrow. So now what I can do is I can, instead of sending you one Sylo per request, I can send you a ticket that has a 1 in 10,000 chance of winning. And I can send you 10,000 tickets and you'll win once. And what that means is that if you extrapolate that out, you can actually, as a host, take the 1 in 10,000 ticket as the face value 1 in 10,000. And what it also means is that there's only an on-chain transaction 1 in 10,000 times, as opposed to 10,000 times. So that's the micropayments mechanism that enables data to be charged for when it makes sense to charge. And yeah, I mean, I think, does that make sense? Does that
That's fascinating, and that's very similar to the original paper, is it not? Because I remember there was documents about like a micro payment as well, but I haven't found that or gone super in depth with it. But when I was talking with Aaron on the Spaces yesterday, he made a comment to me about how for protocols, it's mainly for developers. And so reading on the white paper, the next thing saying users, games and applications transact against the asset register and Sylo token to equip and unequip assets. I guess question with that is, when it's like users, is there ever like a point where, you and I are going to need Sylo for something in specific, or is it more for the developers and the people that are, building out these data, the, IP, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, at the protocol layer, there needs to be a payment. But what we're actually seeing happening is that it's much more appealing from a UX perspective for the experience to absorb that cost. So they look at those kinds of transactions like they would an AWS charge, as opposed to requiring their user to pay. Now, requiring users to pay on a per transaction basis is a very, very Web3 concept. It's not something that exists in Web2 games. Like you don't walk around Fortnite and pay for every single hit to AWS or the game server. So it makes sense that it's a B2B charging model. But we use permissioning in the background to make sure it's still decentralized. So it's actually the experience acting on behalf of the users with permission from a network or blockchain perspective. But yeah, we're trying to abstract away the Web3 complexity as much as possible. We think that's the only way to actually make something like this work.
Well, allowing IP holders to have a character within a silo and them deciding who's allowed to use it and who's not makes me think of the royalties and the potential ecosystem built around it. But am I viewing it wrong that somebody could license a character and they can get royalties, whether that be in Sylo or elsewhere, for an experience? Or what's kind of the scope in connecting elsewhere? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, probably not everybody that's on Sylo wants to get paid in Sylo, but maybe I'm wrong with that assumption.
No, I mean, you're right in that assumption. So the protocol is set up such that if an IP owner wants to charge per use, for example, then the silo that's serving that content will serve it in exchange for a payment, so in exchange for a ticket. And it could be that the IP holder themselves are hosting that silo, so they're getting the payments directly. Or it could be that they're offloading the hosting obligation to another silo, and they get a cut of that. The payments at the network layer are in silos, but of course that can be abstracted away as well.
And further down, it says Sylo hosts pay a one-time fee to register their Sylo node. And taking that back to the seekers themselves, obviously, to be able to stake on the Sylo network, you need to have a seeker. But for the nodes, it sounds like those aren't necessarily going to be a thing that people can own until it expands and going into that layer 2. Or maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself, and the silos that are out right now are able to be their own new node, but we're not talking about seekers themselves, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah. So silos themselves are places where you store data, and not needing to be associated with seekers. Where seekers come in is where we decentralize the protocols further. Wow, sorry, that's not a very good way of explaining it. At the moment, the protocols are running on TRN, and TRN layer 1 blockchain. It's going to get to the stage where it doesn't make sense from an efficiency perspective to have those protocols as pallets on TRN. So what we will be doing is taking the on-chain components of those protocols and putting them on a layer 2, so that we get the efficiencies there. And that layer 2 will be the seekers network. Yeah, and the same, nodes on the network. So in the same way that other layer 2s work, where the consensus still happens on the layer 1, i.e. the consensus still happens on TRN, but the actual transactions associated with running the protocols will transition to the seekers network when it makes sense from a scale perspective.
What does that mean from like a scale perspective? Or is that based off of dependent on like need? Like, are we talking, when Aaron's talking about billions of transactions, is that still before that it's scaled and it's trillions when it scales? Or how would your perspective of that be?
No, it's not. I mean, it's not going to be billions. We're at the stage where all of the protocols at the moment work on TRN, and it's cost efficient. But there will be a tipping point, and I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's 10 million or a billion, or I don't know what that number is. But the network will be at its most efficient when we do go through that piece of work. It's not the kind of thing that needs to be done until it needs to be done. But it's the right direction for the network, and it's the right, I believe it's the right place for us to end up. But it's good that we've got that flexibility to be able to move in that direction. And I think that's when the whole story kind of gets completely rounded out with seekers involved in the consensus of the data layer as well.
With Sylo Network and the spaces, along with everything else that you guys are doing, how do you think that Sylo itself is going to impact the broader conversation around centralized and decentralized options? Because I've had the thought over the last little bit, and it's the flat tire reference of, I'm not going to need to know how to change a flat tire unless it happens to me. And then you do it, you're like, damn, I wish I knew how to change a flat tire. And for the centralized things, it's like, I don't think that I need to worry about any kind of decentralization until, oh crap, I can't transfer something that I'm supposed to own, or not able to do something that I'm supposed to be because a centralized entity banned my account or anything of the above. So how do you think Sylo's tentative success is going to impact that broader conversation around decentralization?
Yeah, I think in some regards, decentralization is one of those things that you're right. Once people see the need for it, it almost needs to already exist for them. And that's the approach that we're taking with everything that we're doing here at Futureverse. It's decentralization is in many respects an end user benefit. But if we can provide to businesses and brands exposure to that benefit, then we're going to move the needle. The products that we're rolling out look and feel and behave like Web2 products, and that's so critical, because then you don't need to sell the brands who have the big communities on Web3 for them to be interested, for them to get involved, and you can start to actually talk to the hooks of control of your IP, or monetization of your community through things like the attribution palette if they go out into the open metaverse and things like that. And yeah, it becomes a tougher sell if you're trying to pitch some brand. I mean, some brands get it, but some brands, are just not there yet, and that's okay. So yeah, that is the focus for us. It's delivering Web2 UX on a Web3 backend so that users can actually own the assets that they're the on-chain assets. And ownership, if we're talking Sylo, becomes more important if you actually own the data that sits in behind the assets as well. Blockchain's done a good job of providing you the ability to own an NFT, own a record on chain. But if you don't also own all of the data associated with that NFT, and you can't actually take that NFT or that asset wherever you want to take it, then ownership is a bit of a facade. So Sylo solves for that and makes it actually owned by the user, which is really important.
AI agents are something that's also mentioned on the paper where it says enabling agents with data. The Sylo Network supercharges agents, AI-driven entities like companions, guides, or merchants. I thought that was interesting. There were very specific terminologies, and as someone that's not really gone out and messed with too many of the AI agents, how big of an impact do you think that Sylo's data structure is for that? Do you think that everyone's going to want to connect to Sylo Rails because of it? Is it just going to be the think agent side? What's your perspective on that, as I know you guys are a part of that AI Institute?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a nod to the agent side of things. Open and accessible data is something that needs to exist for people and their assets, and for agents, and the things across the open metaverse that they want to interact with. And yeah, I mean, we know that the whole Think protocol is around the member matrix and the ability to add context and memories to assets over time, and that data can be fed into LLMs to provide human-like personalities to assets, NPCs within games. So I think that's a really powerful part of what we're doing. Again, it's to do with the ownable data side of things. If you don't, or if a user or an agent doesn't also own the context, or i.e. all data associated with that asset, then it becomes gated and walled and just not as useful. So yeah, a common data layer is common to anything that needs to access that data, and that's what we're providing.
I was thinking back to our conversation around the centralized versus decentralized conversation, and on X, the AI agent reply bots. It's funny. People bring up, the greatest renaming in like 2025 is changing from bots to calling them AI agents, and I agree. But one of the scary things with it for people that are following certain things like the AIX RP as an example, where it's an AI agent on this X platform giving out information. But what if X all of a sudden says, hey, you know what? We don't want to have these AI entities on our platform. It's human only, where now you guys have the Sylo Spaces. You have Prof. Sparky out there giving a whole bunch of different takes regarding the Third Kingdom in episode 2. I mean, when we're looking at Sylo Spaces, what's your perspective on it? How important do you think that platform can be? And are you happy with it when you guys originally kind of started saying, hey, we want to be like a communications layer, and now you're at a point where it's developed into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfect home for agent-based comms. It's You're right about X, and actually the charging model for agents or bots on X is actually gets really expensive really quickly. So there's definitely a home for that kind of functionality to live within Spaces. I think the direction that Spaces is heading is one that is going to enable communities, brands, and companies to get from 0 to 1 in terms of being able to roll out a Web3 experience for their communities, and having a brandable wallet with the assets that you as a brand want your community to be exposed to, and a social setting where you can grease the wheels, so to speak, with agent help. So agents can help to moderate, agents can help to provide the content. I really feel like that's a strong proposition. And then if you tie that into the assets for the brands actually being more useful beyond the walls of the space, which is the whole proposition, right? You can take your asset from your space into any other experience or game. That's where the rubber hits the road and where things actually become magical. But from an agent perspective, agents at the moment are a tool, right? But I think with the right amount of time and the thinking in line with how we're thinking about things, where agents could potentially do anything that a human could do with access to the right data, then you start to, it's crazy the possibilities that open up. And that goes beyond web into actual games, which is exciting.
I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but hearing the breakdown of all this stuff is just, it feels like you're a genius. You're a genuine genius going over all these things, thinking of what the rails are going to be for AI agents, the connections to all of it, the data layer, the chance that this is going to revolutionize or help facilitate gaming, content creators, having people matter again, and the whole vision around Futureverse. Like, it is truly exciting, and not to, overhype that aspect, but I think that it is really, really cool that, in a way, I feel like I'm documenting the history from the help of you and other team members around Futureverse and everyone within the Web3 space, because it does feel like this is a very transformative moment within history. But we've talked about a whole lot. Is there anything you feel that we haven't touched on that you feel is worth bringing up or worth talking about quickly?
I mean, I don't have a list of talking points here per se. I think no, I think we've covered off quite a lot. I mean, I will say that I really do feel like the rubber is hitting the road, and that the next few months in particular are where things are truly going to come to light, which is really exciting. I think the stuff that's happening on the Rediverse side of things is it's providing the connection, I think, and the ability to really understand a lot more for the community and for those outside of the four walls of the Futureverse office to see where things are heading, and to provide that belief that the Ready Player One vision is something that we can execute on, which I think is really exciting. And the conversations that are spinning out of that realization are they're pretty groundbreaking. Like, we're in a really exciting phase, and I mean, you call me a genius, and I mean, thank you very much, but this is not me. This is the work of, you know, a couple hundred people grinding for years to get to this stage. We're solving some outrageously difficult problems. But that's what brings us, you know, gets us out of bed in the morning every single day. It's like, what do we need to solve today? So yeah, I'm excited about where we're at. I think we're heading in a really, really good direction, and yeah, really proud of everyone, and really, really quite excited to see how things are coming together.
Well, we're quite excited to follow along on your journey, Ben. I appreciate you taking the time for doing this again from the whole Futureverse community. We don't get to see you enough, and I think they're going to absolutely love this. So again, thank you for setting this up. And is there anything that we can expect? I guess final thing, we got to go a little bit of alpha hunting. We've seen that there's been like an announcement every single week for Sylo. Is now that the paper's out, that kind of going to stay quiet for a little bit, and now it's just kind of the roll-ups, updates to Spaces, and everything around that, or is there still more to come about Sylo?
Yeah, I mean, on the Sylo front, we've put out that paper, which I think rounds off the proposition to, you know, makes it understandable. What the guys are working on now is a few more articles, papers, documents, I don't know what you want to call them, to really lay out the three core protocols. And I think once that's done, then you know, the whole Sylo proposition is out there and will be usable, which is awesome. We'll start to see it integrated a lot more tightly with you know, all of the experiences that are coming down the pipeline. And yeah, it's an execution and rollout. I don't want to say problem because it's solved, but you know, it's not ambiguous anymore for us internally in terms of where things need to go for Sylo to be, you know, done, which is exciting.